And a good Monday evening, everybody. Chris McDonald with you on this Monday night. We are here on the 13th day of May, 2024. We're grateful to have everyone in the house tonight. And let's see here. There we go. We got that off there now. We're grateful to have you. We're on audio only tonight. We're coming to you from location. And Inslee Grace McDonald is not our guest tonight. She will not be making her debut till October of 2024. That is the name of my brand new sweet granddaughter that is on the way, and we're excited to have her coming. And number four for my middle son Brandon, 2 boys and 2 girls, and Papa Mac is now times 4, and always a good thing. We're in Baton Rouge, Louisiana tonight on location. So what a pleasure to meet Mark Coleman, Brian Haney, Joe Maxwell, and Chad Pipkin. And we'll tell you more about that Wednesday night, Lord willing. Now, we're going to be have a sporadic week of shows this week, but I wanted to come on tonight because we are honoring tonight Israel in her 76th birthday. She's a lot older than 76. I love what Jason Miller sent me tonight, and I'll put this up if I can find the download the meme here. But and I can actually. Israel. This was off of a tweet earlier tonight from somebody, and I'll put it in the house here, and I'll show you this. Happy birthday, Israel! 3,000 years since King David made Jerusalem the capital of Israel, 76 years since Israel was reborn, and I'm glad the person said this right. They were reborn as a nation again. God bless the Holy Land of Israel. Amen. 3,000 years old, 76 years young. Happy birthday to Israel. Stand with us. And not many people are doing that tonight at all. We've got a couple of stories I want to show you. We'll come over here to this one here. We were on Friday night with James Akers, and James mentioned this right here. Biden's bombs falls will cause Israeli soldiers to die. But there's another story tonight that is even more interesting, and we're going to put this up. Israel, I know that a lot of people, the headlines these days is Biden has turned on Israel. Well, I would say we can reverse that narrative a little bit tonight and say that Israel has turned on Joe Biden. The billboards that were there just several months ago that were thanking Joe Biden, and really they shouldn't have been thanking him for anything because he's done nothing but betray him from day one, and I got something to say about that. But their billboards tonight are now telling him, please don't, no thanks. And it criticizes him. A billboard in a Western Jerusalem neighborhood that once thanked U.S. President Joe Biden for his support has been changed to criticize Biden for pressuring Israel not to pursue Hamas terrorists and win the war in Gaza. As Breitbart News reported in October, shortly after the outbreak, a street in the heart of the old German colony, an area popular with Americans, was thanking President Joe Biden for his support, was the only face in sight Friday evening. Families gathered for the Sabbath meal. Some walked through the streets, the mothers pushing strollers, the fathers carrying rifles slung across their shoulders. There are fears that some of the Hamas terrorists who infiltrated Israel on October the 7th had lain low and could strike at any moment. He had visited Israel just a few days before. He was the first U.S. president to visit Israel during wartime, and there was a lot of hope that he was going to fulfill his promise to support Israel. And of course, that was just a ruse and a farce. And this sign has replaced the one you just saw right there where it said thanks. And this one tonight is a lot more biting. And I think this is what Israel has a very legitimate right to tell Joe Biden tonight. Dear President, the screams of our babies, children, women, men, and elderly who were murdered, slaughtered, raped, and burned alive are calling you from the ashes. No more. Please don't. In other words, leave us alone and stop interfering in what we're doing. And National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan claimed Monday that there had been more heat than light in media coverage of the differences between the Biden administration and the Israeli government over the conduct of the war. Well, that may be true to a degree, but I will tell you this, a lot of that reporting is actually coming from left-wing sources, not just right-wing sources. And it's pretty much a given, folks, that the American government has put pressure on Israel because some of the Israeli newspapers are saying the same thing. So it's not just the media here, it's the media all over the world. And the UN would not be doing what it's doing, trying to bring the Palestinians to the table as a state, unless the U.S. was giving them a nod at the head and a green light to do it. We're on a very abbreviated show tonight. We're not going to be here for 2 hours, maybe not even make it an hour, but we're going to be on here for a while. And I want to just say something about what's been going on. We are witnessing a monumental change in policy. There are people out there that have mocked the show when we have said that the United States has turned its back on Israel. There have been those that have wrongly claimed that we are naive and we don't understand the real picture, that America would never turn its back. And then when they're backed into the corner of their own stupidity, they claim, well, we mean that the people in America have not given up on Israel. The government has. And folks, the government represents the people. And the truth of the matter is this: when you look at the protests of these colleges and you look at the anti-Semitism that is raging on the internet and you look at the anti-Semitism that is raging throughout the land, I would dare say that the people in this audience, I know tonight, this is a conservative, leaning, Christian leaning, Judeo-faith group, and there is for the most part, the Judeo-Christian community in America has not. They still support Israel, but that community is growing smaller and smaller. And I tend to believe that the sentiment in the nation is changing as well as the government. Now, I'm not taking issue with the individuals that are out there mocking the show. We're big boys here. If we can't stand the heat in the kitchen, as the old saying goes, we get out of the kitchen. We ain't getting out of the kitchen. Bring the heat. It's okay. We can handle it. I don't mind differences of opinion, and whatever people want to believe, they can believe. We're entitled to ours, and that's what we believe. And I believe that if you look at some of the polling and some of the things that people are supporting and what they're not supporting, and what makes it so sad tonight is that even among the Jewish communities in America, there is this idea that Israel the state is corrupt and the Israel the state is not the same as the Israel of the Bible, and that is so fallacious, folks. That is untrue. And look, we don't glorify the state. It's not about a political thing to me. It's a spiritual exercise. It goes back to Genesis 12:3. And the Holy Land is Israel. The Holy Land is not America. It has been 76 years since Israel was reborn as a nation again. And Israel, it's been 3,000 years since King David. And I love what Jason sent me. He said, Chris, God has named his chosen people Israel because, as only Jason Miller can come up with, this lets the world know that God is real. And you can take that and look at that symbol, and it says Israel, and you can catch the drift, what Jason was saying. And he's absolutely correct tonight, because Israel's existence is a way to know that God exists and he is real, and he's still real tonight, and he will always be real. And Israel's existence is why many are seeking her destruction tonight, because they, as I've always said, the world hates Israel. Israel hates Christ, but the world hates Israel because of Christ. And it's without a doubt what is happening in this nation tonight. Now, I know we're late and we're going to take some statements from you. I do want to talk about something else that some of you may or may not know. And tonight represents the 85th anniversary, actually, tonight. The 85th anniversary on May 13th, 1939. A ship by the name of the St. Louis left Nazi Germany for the West. And I've watched some documentaries about this weekend, a movie I would very highly recommend you watching called Voyage of the Dam. There's a pendant documentary that goes along with the movie, and that's what I have said and so forth. And I want to say this tonight about the St. Louis. There's two things that we need to understand. Hitler let that ship go from Germany for a reason. This happened roughly 3 or 4 months after the November night of Kristallnacht, which is basically the night of the broken glass. The Jews were getting ready to flee Germany. Hitler would not have allowed that ship to leave the port for any other reason but to test the will of the West and to see what the West would do with 937 Jewish people. Now, we don't worship numbers, but when I saw that figure over the weekend, I've seen that figure forever, and I've looked at those figures, and I said, Lord, 937. I said, how much more prophetic can we get? 9 and 3 is 12, and then 7. 12 is the number of God's government. 7 is the number of God and His perfection. And any way you shake that number out, you come up with 3 numbers that represent God Himself. 9, if you separate those numbers out, 9 is judgment, 3 is the Trinity, 7 is God's number, 9 and 3 is God's government. But anyway, out of 937 souls, Hitler would have never allowed that many Jews to leave Germany unless he was doing it as a propaganda war and as a propaganda test to what the West would do with 937 Jews. And when I had talked about the St. Louis before, I have not really given specific details. I've been given general details. But I'm going to give you some specifics tonight as to what happened to that ship. It went to Havana, Cuba first. And all 937 had visas to disembark from Cuba. They also had the American papers that they could get to America. They could actually immigrate into America. When they got to Cuba, a corrupt government under Batista and President Azur, A-Z-U-R, basically reneged on their promise to allow the Jews to disembark. And they literally blackmailed and extorted many of the Jewish families to get their loved ones off. There was a few that got off the boat, but not many. America sent telegrams to the Jews, the Gustav Schroeder, the captain, who was actually part of the Nazi party, but he did not like the Nazis. He had a lot of sympathy for the Jewish people, and he did everything he could while in Cuba, including going ashore and meeting with the Cuban president. And he also sent telegrams. There was 2 telegrams that we know of that were directly sent to the Roosevelt White House. And I'm going to say a few things tonight at the end, folks. This is going to be one of those Chris McDonald opinion things. You can take it for what it's worth, but you better listen carefully to what I'm about to say to you. You had 937 refugees that were looking for shelter in the West. They were looking for shelter from a Nazi storm that was coming upon Europe. It had already started. And when they got to Cuba, they were turned aside. And Cuba said, you're not going to go into our country. So the ship, after several weeks into June, turned north, and they parked the boat outside of Miami. And they waited and waited and waited on the American government to say yes to allowing that boat to come in. Now, there have been some reports in history, and I wasn't there in 1939, contrary to rumors that Chris is that old, but there are some rumors, and I've read some historical accounts, that Roosevelt not only ignored the telegram, and Eleanor ignored it, and I've got something to say about Eleanor Roosevelt, but there was threats made by the American Coast Guard. The Coast Guard was told that if that ship came any closer to Miami, that it was to be basically dealt with and blown out of the water. Now, there's some question whether that actually happened, but considering what we did with that boat, I don't doubt it. And One of the telegrams to Franklin Roosevelt was begging them to let these 937 passengers off in Miami. It was an election year. Franklin Roosevelt was scared of the economic impact of 937 Jews. And I want you to listen to the irony of this, folks. Listen carefully to what I'm saying to you tonight. And we're sharing something with you that's showing you the principle of Genesis 12:3. They that bless Israel will be blessed. Those that curse Israel will be cursed. 1939, she wasn't even a nation, but representatives of that nation to come were sent to this country as refugees, legal refugees. They had papers. They wasn't coming in here illegal. They had legitimate papers to come into the country. We turned them away. The second telegram that went to Eleanor Roosevelt begged them just for the kids. They said, if you're not going to let the adults leave the boat, at least let us send the kids into America. That telegram was taken by Eleanor Roosevelt, according to historical accounts of people that saw the situation firsthand. When she got that telegram, she took that telegram, wadded it up in her hand, and threw it in the trash can. That telegram never saw Franklin Roosevelt's eyes. It's ironic that he died nearly 2 years almost to the day, or right after that, shortly. In 39, I think it was 43 or 44, but it was almost 5 years, almost to the day. He died in the same month that this ship came into the harbor of America. And he did win re-election that year, but it basically cast a pall over our nation. Let me tell you what happened to the ship. 937 people. Gustav Schroeder saw that there was no hope whatsoever in Cuba. The Dominican had offered some kind of extortion fees that they were willing to take a few Jews in, but it was just what the money that was going to be required to get off that boat, most didn't have. The conditions on the boat, there was so much anxiety, fear. Kids were on there. This documentary I watched, it really gave some heart-wrenching testimony, and a lot of these people are probably not even alive, because this was, the documentary I saw was dated in 94, so that's 30 years ago, and a lot of those folks were already in their 70s and 80s then. But they turned back, and Gustav Schroeder was so desperate to find safe harbor for these Jewish refugees that he telegrammed Europe and some of the European nations, and the American Jewish Council at the time, that's the name of the organization, commission. They were working feverishly behind the scenes. Secretary of States were being contacted of several nations. And 4 nations in Europe, Belgium, the Netherlands, France, and Britain, agreed to take in a portion of the 937. And it seemed at the time the Jews were elated they didn't have to go back to Germany. But they went into occupied Europe. And the ones in Britain, for the most part, were totaled roughly about 237. Folks, that is the only amount of Jews that survived the Holocaust of 1939 to 1945. The ones that went into the Nazi-occupied territories of Europe, all of them perished in concentration camps, to our knowledge. That's what history tells us. That's what we've confirmed through the years in our historical study. 937 Jews, 238 roughly or so, survive, and the rest were sentenced to death by America, and they were sentenced to death by Cuba. I was thinking about this weekend, and I'm going to give you something to chew on tonight. You ain't got to believe this, and you don't have to agree with it even, but I'm going to give you something to think about. Tonight, on this 76th anniversary of Israel's existence as a reborn nation, she's fighting again for her soul. She's fighting again for her survival. We're turning our back on her. And we're celebrating, if you don't want to call it a celebration, we're commemorating 85 years of an ill-fated ship that left May 13th, 1939. Of 937 legal refugees, that were just seeking safe harbor in America, and we turned our back on them. And we not only turned our back on them, but we sent them back to their death. We sent them back to the death. And the thing about it, folks, is this. We have been overrun by millions of illegals in this country. And our judgment tonight of these illegal aliens, this judgment of 937 souls that we condemned to death, other than the 230 that wound up in England. The people in Belgium, it was just months after that the ship docked and they went to Belgium, that Germany had overrun the Netherlands, the Dutch countries. France got taken over, Belgium got taken over, the Netherlands, the Holland, and that area up in there got taken over by Nazi forces. And you know what happened when they would go into these nations? They would search out the Jews like animals. They'd hunt them down. They'd put them in trains, and they'd send them to gas chambers. We have allowed over, God knows, 12 to 15 million illegals to run roughshod over this nation. And our nation is paying a price tonight for illegal immigration. Now, I'm just going to give you my opinion, and I may be ultimately proven wrong on this, but I'm going to say it. I personally believe, folks, that part of this judgment that has come upon this nation with this illegal immigration is tied to this ship. It's tied to our handling 85 years ago. And you say, well, why does God wait so long? Because the scales of justice, folks, in God's kingdom may not operate quickly as we think they do, but God don't forget. I'm thinking of the situation when Israel rebelled against David and took up arms with Absalom, and they led a rebellion against David, and they never repented of it. And it was some maybe 5 to 10 years later when the death angel held a sword out over Israel because David numbered the people and 85,000 men perished, and it seemed a quite high price for a census. But the Bible sort of gives insight to the fact that that was about the number that threw their lot in with Absalom when he tried to usurp his dad's kingdom and rebel and lead a rebellion against David. And that was about the number that was basically the death angel caused to die during that great plague of 2 Samuel chapter 30. You can read that in 2 Samuel 30. God's justice may not take place overnight, but God's justice don't stop. And it's just food for thought tonight, folks. Just food for thought tonight. Just food for thought. 85th anniversary of the St. Louis tonight, and it's ironic that it falls on the 76th birthday of Israel being reborn as a nation. So at a time when 937 souls would have easily immigrated into this country and assimilated. And let me remind you of something, folks. Every life that is saved, you're not just saving one life, you're saving a generation of people. Elie Wiesel said that. He said, for every Jew killed in the Holocaust, you were killing off 6 generations or more. For every Jew saved during the time when Oskar Schindler put roughly 1,000, 1,500, and he hid 1,500 Jews from being slaughtered. It was not just the 1,500 that Oskar Schindler saved. He was saving 15 to 150,000 or more or later generations that were to come over the course of the next century, over the course of the next decade and decades or more, maybe close to 100,000, 50,000, 60,000, how many ever the number. Only God knows. Both principles are important to remember. Every life that is saved, you don't just save that life. That's why these babies are so vitally important. When we say a woman's killing a baby, she's not just killing that baby, neighbor. She's killing every generation that is in that baby. When a doctor snuffs a baby out because it's the choice of somebody wanting to kill it, we're not just snuffing the life of that individual baby out. We're killing an entire generation off. When we save a baby's life, we're not just saving a baby, we're saving an entire generation. And this ship, when we lost 600 or so, maybe 667, 68 souls, it was not just 668 souls that perished in Nazi-occupied Europe, but it was generations to come. generations to come that would ultimately perish in this. When the events of October the 7th took place and Hamas butchered and raped and slaughtered and murdered almost 750 Jews, neighbor, it wasn't just the 750 Jews that died, but they were slaughtering generations to come. And they were trying to wipe out a Jewish race, just like Hitler tried to do back in the 1930s. And the seeds of this hatred, folks, are planted deep, deep in the heart of so many tonight. And on this 76th anniversary, that Israel is 3,000 years old and 76 years young, and on the 85th anniversary of an ill-fated ship that Hitler used, and let me make it clear to you tonight, that ship was let go by Hitler. He didn't care about those 937 Jews. He probably took a bet. It was a given. It was a propaganda effort because he was giving the West a test. He was testing the West to see how they would feel about 937 Jews, and we ultimately failed that test, other than England, that took in 238 or so souls under pressure, but they did take them in. That was Hitler's nod from the West. You can do what you want to do to the Jewish people. We will not stand in your way. And let's just be brutally honest tonight, folks. The West did not stand in Hitler's way. Had Japan not entered into this war and caused the Americans to suffer loss at Pearl Harbor, it's very possible, we don't know this, but it's very possible America would have never interfered with what was going on in Europe. Because we did not care for the Jewish race. Franklin Delano Roosevelt could have cared less. Eleanor Roosevelt didn't even care about the kids. She wouldn't even listen or even read the telegram that was sent from Gustav Schroeder saying, look, can y'all at least take the kids? Just let the kids get off the boat. They wouldn't take the kids and the children. And I say they, it's we. We as Americans. And you look, folks, at who's paid the greatest price in this nation, and you look at what we're paying right now for these illegal aliens running around this country, the killings and the rapes and the murders and all these things that have happened since this illegal immigration push has overran this country. You don't have to be a genius to draw too many conclusions. And I'm not trying to stretch something, but it goes back to the fundamental verse of Genesis 12:3 tonight, folks. I will bless them that bless you, and I will curse them that curse you. And in thee all the families of the earth will be blessed, and I will tell you those that disparage Israel and those that hate Israel and those that try to destroy Israel. You can sort of bring that verse in the other direction and say, if you curse Israel and all of the families that hate Israel, those families and those generations and those nations will be cursed. Will be cursed. We got a choice tonight, folks. Because, see, we don't have an Adolf Hitler around right now that's doing this to the world like there was one back in the 1930s. But there's one coming. There's one coming that's going to make Hitler look like a choir boy. And his spirit is operating in the earth tonight, folks. His spirit is operating in the earth. And his spirit is seeking the destruction of this proud nation called Israel, just like the spirit of the devil tried to do it in 1930 and destroy Israel then. He's trying to destroy Israel tonight for the same reasons. And they're prophetic. They're not just political, but they're prophetic and they're spiritual. We as a people of America, we as a people of God, we have a choice tonight. We have a choice tonight. We can either honor and pray for and support. And when I say support, folks, I'm not talking about supporting everything that the state of Israel does and backing the play of every political movement and every political thing that she does. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that we support the Jewish people with our love, with our finances if necessary, with our prayers. We pray for the peace of Jerusalem. When we're praying for the peace of Jerusalem, we're praying for the soon return of our Lord Jesus Christ tonight, who is of the line of the tribe of Judah. He is of the line of the tribe of Judah. These are people after his own flesh tonight. I wonder tonight, as I leave you before we start taking a few questions and statements, if there was an Adolf Hitler tonight that did the same thing and he sent 937 souls to this country, I wonder would we take in 937 legal Jewish immigrants any more than we took them in then? You do the math of what we've allowed in illegally. And it makes you wonder tonight if we would honor them any more tonight than we did then. But I can tell you, and you've heard me say it often, and I'll say it again tonight, when the smoke clears, when the smoke clears, Israel's still going to be standing. Israel is still going to be standing. Israel, all of Israel shall be saved. All of Israel shall be saved tonight. All of Israel shall be saved. That's not a promise that's given in the Bible to America. I pray that this country is saved. I pray this country comes back to God. I pray that we find our senses and spiritual senses before it's too late. But there's no guarantee that that's going to happen, folks. There's no guarantee that's going to happen. But as we honor Israel tonight, 3,000 years old, 76 years young, I have to repeat what Jason Miller said to me tonight, and he's right on target. The reason God named Jacob and changed his surname to Israel, I think in many ways he's right, is to let us know that God is real. Because God, the God of Israel is not going away. And he is not, she may be away from him tonight, but he's never going to let her out of his sight. And she is not going to be destroyed. She will be persecuted. She's going to be hunted down, and it's going to look like she is going down for the count. But I can tell you, when the smoke clears, this 3,000-year-old, 76-year young nation is still going to be here on this earth. It's still going to be here on this earth. The lesson of the St. Louis is very simple tonight. That was their test then. The October 7th event is our test this year, is tonight. If we can't condemn the butchering and the murder and the slaughter of the babies, we're no better than what they did, this government did in 1937. And I want you to look at that sign again. They put this up today to Joe Biden. Dear President, the screams of our babies, children, women, men, and elderly, who were murdered, slaughtered, raped, and burned alive, are calling you from the ashes no more. Please don't. Please don't. That's not just for the murder of October the 7th, but you could say that about all babies that have been slaughtered and butchered in this nation. They're calling from the ashes too. They're calling from the ashes too. We're grateful you've been with us on this Monday night. If you got a question for us, either in Facebook or you've got anything that you'd like to say tonight, we'd be glad to read it. I'm going to come over here to the page here on our McFiles News and Faith Network. I want to thank you all for being with us. I know it's a little late tonight, but Dennis Floyd said, just a thought, when did Roosevelt come down sick? It was after he turned away the St. Louis Dennis. It was probably about 5 years. He died, I think it was the spring of 1943, and Harry Truman took over sometime in 43. But yes, it was shortly after that he came down sick. He sure did. And you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. No coincidences, my friend. No coincidences. None. There's just none. And anyway. Anyway. Let's see here. Hey, Carol Puma, good to see you in the house tonight. Good to see Carol. Cleo, thank you for being out there tonight for us. It's daytime in the middle of the day in Australia, but I know you're middle of your day. Thank you for being in there tonight, dear. Appreciate you. All of our moderators. But Cleo, thank you tonight. Any other questions? Any other statements tonight, folks, that are on topic? They need to be on topic about Israel tonight. This is about the 76th. It's their Independence Day, actually. It's their Memorial Day. And I will say this, too, tonight. Benjamin Netanyahu said tonight that if the American government does not give Israel what it needs, it will go at it alone to destroy Hamas. And that's where Israel is basically at tonight. They are fighting this war by themselves. They literally are fighting this war by themselves. And they shouldn't be. If you heard James Akers Friday night, I tend to believe what he said is true. That the hostages that we're holding out hope for that are still alive, folks, there's very little chance that these hostages are even alive anymore, because there's been no word on them for several months, and I just don't know. I don't know. And I have no idea how many nukes Israel has. It's really irrelevant to the discussion tonight. It's irrelevant to the discussion. Anyway. Good to see Corey Aguilar in the house tonight. Good to see all you folks in YouTube tonight. We appreciate you all. Lisa Ramos is up with us tonight. Happy birthday to her. I think it was 2 days ago. Yeah, she had a birthday 2 years ago, 2 days ago. Good to see you. Angie DeLay, Patty, Joanne, good to see you tonight. Bear, Susan Prusky, good to see you, all of you. And we're grateful that y'all are here tonight. And we hope that you've enjoyed the show. Have you enjoyed what we've done so far? And again, folks, these are things I encourage you to research out. There's, again, the movie The Voyage of the Damned. It was made back in the 1970s, maybe 75. Max von Sydow played the captain. By the way, that captain, Gustav Schroeder, let me tell you how sick our government is. America, if you can believe this, They went after him as a war criminal after the war. He wound up at Nuremberg, and the people from the St. Louis had to go and testify on his behalf because America hunted him down as a Nazi. And I found that so maddening, insane, that a man who risked his life to carry 937 Jews across the Atlantic and then turned around and took them back would be hunted down like a war criminal by this country and basically tried as a war criminal. And there was something that he wrote in his log. He had actually came up with this idea that if the four nations had not chosen to take the Jews in Europe, he was going to basically manufacture an accident in the southwest part of England and claim that he was having mechanical problems, bring the ship ashore, burn the ship, let the Jews off, and just go off into the sunset. That way in England he knew that they would have been safe. And that didn't happen because the four nations said okay before he carried out that plan. But that was in his captain's log. He literally wrote that down, that was what he planned to do. He had even told his crew that. So he was trying to save those Jews, and yet they tried him later, and he was basically acquitted. They stopped persecuting and prosecuting him after the testimony of many of the St. Louis that said he stood up for them. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. Anyway. Good to see everybody tonight, and looks like we don't have many questions, so I'm going to say goodnight to you. I hope you've enjoyed this special Monday night. We're on location. We'll probably be here again tomorrow night, and we'll see. See you here tomorrow night, probably audio again. Now, I know you Bible students are biting at the bit for some Bible studies. Hopefully by Wednesday morning we'll have one, maybe Thursday morning. We're not just here for the studio thing this week. We're here for the graduation of the Beautiful Gate Christian Academy. That's why we're here in the Cajun country in Mississippi. Our dear friend Sheila Daspit and the school that we support, all these kids are graduating. We're going to be speaking to them Thursday. And we thank you for your prayers, for traveling mercies, and any financial help you can pass on to us, folks, right now would be so much appreciated. We really do appreciate it. ZELLE, chrismac44@gmail.com is the easiest way to do it. PayPal.me/themcfiles is the other. And we're grateful for any of help that you can give us and assistance and so forth tonight. We hope that you've enjoyed the show. We hope this is giving you some food for thought. Thank you, Cleo. The movie is The Voyage of the Damned. And Keith Walker, good to see you tonight. And we encourage you to check that movie out. But also, folks, check out their documentary. There's a documentary that says The Voyage of St. Louis. And it goes on, the BBC put it out. And it's an excellent documentary. And it interviews a lot of the survivors from the St. Louis that actually they were the ones that wound up in Britain. And they talk about the moves. And there's several gut-wrenching stories. And again, we're trying to find a living survivor. It's hard because a lot of these folks, when that interview was done in that documentary was 94, they were already, most of them were in their 50s and 60s, 70s. I know one lady was 80. I know she's definitely not living now. So we're trying to get some folks to talk to us. Ruth Guggenheim is helping us maybe track down some folks. And but I feel like this is something that's been forgotten, this St. Louis voyage, and it don't need to be. We need to remember the past, and we need to remember it, not to dwell on it, but to understand the source of what's happening today is not new. What's happening today with this Jew hatred is not new. It's been going on for a long, long time. And I want to say it again as I close tonight, folks. Those 937 souls, they had the papers to come into this country legally. We turned them aside, sent them to their death. And the death knell of this country is over the same exact issue tonight: illegal immigration, illegal aliens overrunning our nation. You do the math. Now, you may not draw the same conclusion I do about that, but I will tell you this: I don't think it's a stretch. And the second thing to remember is that that boat was a test to the West. And I just wonder tonight, if we were given a similar test, what would we do? And I think that when you get down to it, October the 7th was a test. It was our modern day test, and we're failing it again. And we're failing it again. Our prayers for Israel tonight, our prayers for this nation, our prayers for the Biden administration, that they see the light and do the right thing. And I know Cleo's told me that Australia's government is sort of the same, in the same boat that we are right now. And our prayers for the Australian government, that they do the right thing, and all of these governments of the world, folks. Israel has a right, a God-given right, a prophetic right, and a political right to defend its nation and to defend its country. And I'll leave it at that. Did you enjoy this tonight? Put some fire in that house if you did. It's good to see everybody. And thank you, Corey. Good to see you tonight, dear. She's up late. Carol's up late. We're grateful for all of you being up tonight. And put some fire in that house if you enjoyed the show. Listen, I'll see you tomorrow. And the Doom Voyage of St. Louis. Thank you, Cleo. The Doom Voyage of the St. Louis. Absolutely. That's the documentary. Thank you for the title. And it's simple. You can find it on Prime Video, and I think Netflix has it, but you can also find it on YouTube. A lot of these documentaries you can find on YouTube itself. But I encourage you to watch it, folks, and learn these things. Don't forget this. Don't forget these things of history. 3,000 years old and 76 years young. May the Lord bless you tonight. I'll see you tomorrow night, probably the same time, a little bit later in the evening. We may have James Orr on tomorrow night, or he couldn't get him on tonight, but we'll have him on one night this week, and then we'll be back to normal programming next week. But listen, we thank you for your prayers and support, and may the Lord bless you, and we will see you this week at some point. Have a good night, everybody, and be blessed out there. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Good night. want to thank everybody on X tonight, Facebook, and YouTube on this late night Monday. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you all for being with us tonight. We really appreciate you coming out. These late night shows are the best because we got the best crowd. Love you guys. Have a good night. And look for us soon on K-Star Radio coming this summer.